So much, Ivan, thank you so much, Ivan, for such a nice introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Hruška from Sparx Services, Sparx Services Center Europe. I'm a principal consultant and head of cybersecurity modeling. For over 20 years, I've been using model-based thinking to create solutions that truly benefit our clients. One more thing I would like to mention is that I had the opportunity to assist in the introduction of cybersecurity to Sparx Systems Enterprise Architect. I'm thrilled and grateful to have the chance to speak to you today. And I will start somehow unusually. Can I start with an insightful question? So is cybersecurity modeling really the solution to all cyber threats? It's a critical tool, but is it enough? Well, let's explore this topic more. But first, allow me to introduce who we are. We at Liebe Group are experts in modeling, enterprise, and system architecture. Our portfolio includes consulting, coaching, and support services using Enterprise Architect, Prolaborate, and ProCloud Server. We also develop products like Lemon Tree, Embedded Engineer, Codebeamer integration for Enterprise Architect, and modeling assistants, which make your life with Enterprise Architect even more comfortable than it already is. Our customers come from highly regulated industries, such as financial services, automotive, medical, defense, aviation, utilities, and IoT. We also have a strong partner network in the field of cybersecurity consulting. The partner is Austrian Institute of Technology, also known as AIT. Today, we are here to discuss the fascinating world of cybersecurity threats and how to model them effectively in Enterprise Architect. This talk addresses some fundamental questions like, what is the essential prerequisite for modeling cybersecurity threats? What's threat modeling anyway? You will also gain insights into the cybersecurity challenges that arise from current system development practices. Later, you will see how to model threats using the cybersecurity profile available in Enterprise Architect. Resolve the threat model by applying selected mitigation and visualize and communicate it to all stakeholders. Just a heads up, there will be a live demonstration towards the end, so stay tuned. So, do you recognize this place? So this is the Great Pyramid of Giza. Well, actually, this is the current look of the Great Pyramid of Giza. These illustrations on the right and left upper corner, these are illustrations how it's supposed to look like when they were finished, they were built. So you can see that the Nile was just very close by the pyramid. But why am I talking about that? I'm talking about that we are missing the plan. We are missing evidence how those pyramids were built. Of course, we can do reverse engineering. So we can really have a plan of the current state of the pyramid to tiny little detail. We can even have a virtual tour inside the pyramid. But do we actually know how those pyramids were built? There are some theories, like you see the REM theory, the water shaft theory, or some people claim that the aliens actually built it. Some people might think, well, of course, there is no architecture plan, because back then, the architecture planning, there wasn't even paper. There was papyrus, but you could use the papyrus just as good as Enterprise Architect these days. Well, if you really think or believe that back then they didn't, the architecture plans didn't exist, well, think again. A recent discovery found that the oldest architecture plan was dated even to earlier date than the pyramids were built. Well, 4,000 years back, and we are still using the same language, right? The point is, the building industry uses site plans, floor plans, elevation views, cross-section views, and detailed drawings to communicate architecture visually. How does it look in software industry? Have you noticed that sometimes software developers may produce diagrams that appear disorganized or unclear? Like the notation might not make sense or the labeling is just confusing? Well, it's a common issue, unfortunately. Suit yourself. So these are the following drawings, what you will see. These are actually real drawings. These are not 4,000 years old, but these come from my trainings when I ask the attendees, please draw a solution or create a solution. Use whatever tool you have available. In some cases, people use just simply pencil and paper. In other cases, people use PowerPoint or any other tool like Microsoft Visio. But, you know, is this really the architecture what we are looking for? Could we build a system out of this? Or in fact, could we identify the threats from this drawing or this one, right? Well, some people think that describing an architecture is just about putting a big box labeled enterprise service bus on a PowerPoint slide. So just a fun fact, this was generated by AI, which is called Scribble Diffusion. And if you later, I will provide a presentation. When you click on a link, you will get exactly to the description. So how it works, you just doodle this, describe what the final result should look like, and AI will take care of the rest. Very amazing to, once you show it to your kids, they will spend a lot of time by playing with this. Well, why am I talking about architecture when this talk should be focused on cybersecurity? When it comes to cybersecurity, it's extremely important to create an architecture model. This model will give you a clear idea of all your IT infrastructure and software components. With this understanding, you can see where hackers might try to sneak in and cause trouble. That's why a well-designed architecture model is so crucial. It gives you the big picture of your tech landscape and helps you stay protected. Now let's talk about a definition of threat. So the word threat can mean a few different things. Sometimes it's like a warning that someone might cause harm, or it could refer to something potentially dangerous. Other times, it talks about a specific situation that could be risky, like when people say a hurricane threatens coastal towns. And then there is the idea that something might be at risk of being attacked, like if someone asked you, what are you going to do to protect your castle walls from invaders? Speaking of a castle as an analogy, threat modeling is a fancy name for something we all do instinctively. Picture this. Someone asks you to threat model your castle. It's quite nice to imagine that you are the owner of a castle. But anyway, just picture the situation. What you would probably do as a first thing, you would think about all the important stuff inside, like the royal family and the crown jewels, diamonds, and so on and so forth. Then you might start thinking about the security breaches and the possibility of intruders to enter the building. By understanding their tactics, like using a battering ram to break down gates or walls, you can better prepare potential threats. Based on your findings, you will first address the many predictable threats your castle can face. If you want to build a strong castle, there are three important elements to consider: a moat, a keep, and a bailey. The moat was made up of a large pile of earth with a wooden tower on top. Another option is constructing a bailey, which involves flattering an area near the moat to create a courtyard. But what if the attackers set the walls on fire or throw burning stuff inside the walls, igniting the structures? As a result, the outdated castle design was replaced with new stone castles. Using stone in castle building changed the way castles were constructed and started a new era in history. But even this castle was destroyed through the use of advanced fire techniques, rendering its defense mechanism obsolete. So, why am I talking about this story? What's the moral of the story? The moral is that threat modeling is the key to a strong defense strategy, so you have to keep it updated. What are the current challenges we face? Insiders. Insider threats caused by employees with access to sensitive data pose a significant threat to organizations today. The increased adoption of cloud services was created the new challenges such as data protection, access management, and securing cloud-based applications. The Internet of Things has introduced new security challenges that include securing connected devices and the data they generate. Ransomware attacks, which demand higher payments, are on the rise and targeting larger organizations more frequently. Supply chain attacks are growing more sophisticated and involve criminals attacking third-party vendors to gain, for instance, a network access. Data privacy regulations have made protecting sensitive information more significant challenge for organizations. Organizations need to be aware of artificial intelligence and machine learning-based cybersecurity threats and adopt comprehensive security measures such as risk assessments, employee trainings, and advanced security technologies. Tampering networks and systems can cause malfunctioning and data leaks, harming the organization's image. There is nothing worse than when you break down or when you damage the company's reputation. Beware, reputation damage can lead to loss of customers, expenses, and even organization failure. Protect your reputation at all costs. It is crucial to prioritize secure development principles. Failing to implement them correctly could result in significant costs. Fortunately, Microsoft's significant effort in this area has led to the development of Microsoft SDL. The core element, threat modeling, is a necessary set of security activities that effectively reduce software vulnerabilities and development costs. Threat modeling means a lot of different things to different people. I just want to be clear about what I mean by threat modeling. I mean an analysis technique designed to ensure that all engineers can participate, not only security experts. This contrasts with, for example, the IETF. That approach isn't wrong, but it doesn't work for everyone. When it comes to developing software, threat modeling is very important. It helps us make sure that only the right people can do the right things in the system. We always need to be aware of potential threats and what attackers might be trying to do. By doing this, we can stop problems before they even start and find any weaknesses that need fixing. This way, we can ensure our solutions are safe, reliable, and meet all essential security standards. Just remember, threats are not vulnerabilities. Threats live forever. They are the attacker's goal. Threat modeling is a proactive approach to security that can be employed before a product or service is implemented. Unlike other methods such as penetration, testing, and fuzzing, which are reactive. This helps us to make sure that the product or service is designed with security in mind, making it as secure as possible. Let me break down how security testing works so it's easier to understand the point. On the left-hand side of the slide, we have the specification or intended behavior of the application. This is what the application is supposed to do. Then the application gets coded, which is the second rightmost circle. We have actual behavior to compare to the expected behavior. This is the process of testing, find problems, fix problems, and make the two circles merge. But functional testing only finds bugs on the left part of the Venn diagram. These behaviors are what the application should happen, but don't. The disadvantage of security testing compared to threat modeling is that security testing is limited to finding bugs on the left side of the Venn diagram only, while threat modeling can uncover potential security issues on both left and right sides of the diagram. We need to think about what should not happen. Conclusion: threat modeling helps to identify potential threats in a system or application before they occur. By identifying vulnerabilities, developers can fix them before attackers take advantage of them. Threat modeling also helps to identify mitigating factors that can be put in place to prevent or reduce the impact of an attack. Performing risk analysis allows organizations to prioritize security fixes based on potential impact and likelihood of occurrence. Deriving security test cases from the threat model can improve the effectiveness of security testing. Simply, by using it, you can make sure you're addressing any potential issues and making everything more secure for everyone. Plus, it's a cost-effective way to do it. So it's a win-win. Let me go back what I said about a castle analogy and the story's moral. Threat modeling should happen continuously throughout a project, starting from the beginning and continuing until it's implemented. It is impossible to identify all threats from the beginning. As the system's design matures and implementation is in progress, additional threats are discovered. So let's stay focused, keep pushing forward, and make our threat modeling efforts the best they can be. We use Stride as a system of threats classification created by Microsoft to categorize security threats. It helps us understand and talk about different types of threats more effectively. It's a way to find various threats using these easy-to-remember threat types. Keep in mind that identifying a threat and finding a good way to mitigate it is more important than just putting it in the right category. Each threat is a violation of desirable property of the system. I think it would be really helpful if we took a closer look at each threat. But to give you a heads up, this webinar isn't really about the threats themselves. Sounds good? How can we perform threat modeling in Enterprise Architect? Our approach is very straightforward and consists of 4 steps. The threat modeling starts with the creation of a trust diagram type, which is a specially developed diagram derived from a data flow diagram. From that diagram, for each element, identify potential security threats. For each threat, propose mitigation. In some cases, the mitigation takes the form of changing the design itself, in which case the new or changed element must be analyzed in an additional iteration. So it's really iterative process. You don't do it just one time. As already said, the architecture matures over the time. When the mitigations have been implemented, validate the product or service against the threat model to ensure that the mitigations work and that the design functionality and performance are sufficient. If you want to improve your security, look into the cybersecurity feature in Enterprise Architect. It's a great way to start and create a threat model that helps you pinpoint potential risks and vulnerabilities. You can create a threat model that identifies potential vulnerabilities and helps you to come up with a plan to mitigate them. The best part is that it's super easy to integrate with other software and development disciplines without any traceability issues. You can also easily share and communicate your project or selected model elements with the built-in documentation, model sharing, and visualization tools. So, what do you think? So if you ever wanted to do some of these tasks referring data analysis, visualization, and communication in your threat model, Sparx Systems is your vendor. You can use heat map chart layout, which is a great way to highlight important details in your data. With different colors, cell size, and grouping, you can make complex information easier to understand. It's like an upgrade to the bar, column, and pie charts that are already available. Give it a go and see how it works for you. Or do you feel like doing powerful model-driven reporting in the web environment? Sparx Prolaborate is a great tool to check out. It lets you customize how you view the information so you can make it more accessible for everyone who wants to read it. If you're seeking help creating such diagrams or features to automate some of the threat modeling steps, please get in touch with us. Now it's time for a demo. So let me stop sharing for a moment. I need to switch my screen and reshare another one. So this is a live demo, so hopefully everything will go right. Okay. So by now you should see Enterprise Architect. Using the last version of Enterprise Architect 16.1. And just for your information, this built-in feature is available at no additional cost. And it has been implemented in Enterprise Architect version 15.1. So what you see here is the agenda of our live demo. So let me just turn out this cool feature, which is called filter to context. So we will start with just simple diagramming. So creating trust diagram, some tips on a diagram validation, and some thoughts on iterating your diagrams meaning creating different levels of abstractions as you go. Then we will open the, we will discuss the feature of threat modeling in Enterprise Architect. So I will show you how you can assign the concrete threat to a concrete element of the diagram, and how you can mitigate the concrete threat by assigning the concrete mitigation to the threat. Then we will, I will discuss how you can easily trace the threat models with some other models created in other disciplines. For instance, using SysML or UML, depends on what domain you are operating. And then lastly, the threat model communication. So I will show you how easily you can generate a report out of Enterprise Architect. So first thing, what you need to do, I'm not going to describe Enterprise Architect as such, because that would take longer than just an hour and a half. But in order to activate this feature of threat modeling, you need to enable this threat modeling feature. And as soon as you enable the threat modeling perspective, by the way, the perspectives, for those who have never used Enterprise Architect, the perspectives, since Enterprise Architect is such a versatile tool which can help you to model different models from different domains, these perspectives are just grouping all the 80+ supported standards and modeling languages into domains, such as here you see database engineering or enterprise architecture, systems engineering, software engineering, and so on and so forth. So one more time, you will find the threat modeling under management. And as soon as you enable that, it will open something called a model wizard. And a model wizard helps you with a quick start of a predefined, or maybe not a quick start, but will show you the concept of depicting the threat models using this feature in Enterprise Architect. So what you see here is a predefined model, which you can very easily import by selecting the model. Here you just see what's inside of the import, and by clicking on a create models, it will automatically import this predefined model into a package which is selected in the browser. So this is already part of Enterprise Architect. So when I open this diagram, you might notice that the toolbox changed. And this diagram is exactly the customized DFD diagram for the purpose of creating your first threat model. Here in the toolbox, you see elements such as external system, human actor, data store, process, and relationship, data flow, mitigate, and threat trace. And of course, there is something called trust boundary, which plays a very essential role in threat modeling. So here in this model, you can explore it later once you are encouraged to download the trial version of Enterprise Architect from our website, and you can try it out on your own. What you will see here, the first diagram, we will get to the point of diagramming. Okay, so just bear with me. So I just wanted to show you that as a part of the predefined model, you see the way how you could visually handle the traceability between a concrete threats and concrete elements which were available in this diagram. And you see the concrete mitigation. As a proof that there is a traceability, I can show you, if you want to see what threats are threatening this process called supervisor served machine. We can use this feature in Enterprise Architect insert related elements. And here I will select only threat type of elements, refresh. And this feature will automatically insert the elements matching the criteria into the diagram. Where do those elements come from? Those elements come from the traceability created between this process element and these threads. So once I click OK, it automatically inserts all the threads on the diagram. I don't see, on this diagram, I don't see the relationships here, because most likely I have the relationships hidden, so I would have to make them available, but definitely the relationships are there, because as you can see here in the traceability window, it shows you what this threat, concrete threat, threatens. Okay, so let's come back to the first topic, how to create such a trust diagram. So it's quite straightforward. I already have predefined my first trust diagram. I opened it, but I will start from scratch. So in order to create your first trust diagram, since we already switched to the perspective threat modeling, we can very easily just select or choose the option create new diagram, and normally you would get a long list of diagram types, but since we already have the perspective selected to threat modeling, we have only one diagram type available here, which is called trust diagram. Once I create the new diagram, then I can start creating the content. So as soon as you place the concrete element from the toolbox, in my case, external system, you can also, you have the opportunity to define a subtype of the concrete element. So in this case, you have external system, you have these options, you can choose from generate browser and so on and so forth. Later, if you change your mind, later you can change it here in the properties window. So if you want to change it, then it's not a problem. Okay. So, and I will very quickly continue with creation of this diagram. So usually you have some data store. Here you can select file, database, registry, and so on and so forth. And then usually you have some process. Okay. With the help of a feature which is called quick linker, you can very easily, just by dragging and dropping onto the element, create a relationship of a concrete type, which is a data flow type, which is the correct type, what we want. And you can describe the flow by adding some meaningful meaningful description like data. And then you can continue. So some process will most likely store some information, and in some cases will definitely get or fetch some information there. And in some cases, you have as an external actor also a human being, which is using also some process. And then by using the trust boundary, you identify the boundary which says there is something which the boundary can represent DMZ, or it can represent any interface areas where the interfaces are used to communicate with the external entities, what you most likely would like to do the threat modeling or to identify potential security risks. All right, so this is the way how simply you can create a diagram. A diagram validation. Here I have just some example which I will really run very quickly. I have just four rules of thumb. The rules of thumb are based that first, whenever you create a process and some data store, there must be someone who will actually initiate the process, right? Someone like the customer. So always make sure that there is customer or external system which will initiate some process, and then it will store the information in some storage. In similar fashion, you most likely have some process where there is some transaction, and the process doesn't usually communicate directly to another process, right? There might be a need for some data store, correct? So the data store is quite important here. So make sure that the data store is also there created. Rule 3, a data store cannot communicate by itself just like this. It doesn't even offer you this data flow. So you always have to make sure that you, between the two data stores, if there is some communication required, there has to be a process placed in between. And rule number 4 is that you have 2 domains, or let's say 2 zones, which one zone, there is some zone domain admin and another zone administrator, and those 2 zones are talking to each other, and you most likely want to do a threat model or to identify the threats between those 2 zones, which are depicted by the trust boundaries. So don't forget to add the trust boundaries to your trust diagram. If you are asking me, or if you're wondering whether there is some automation implemented in Enterprise Architect, I can just say that currently Enterprise Architect allows you to create a diagram and create the concrete threats, but the content of the threat you need to type manually. Okay, let me show you this on a concrete example. So now we are entering the threat identification and threat mitigation. Perhaps before we enter this one, I promised you to show you different levels of abstractions. So at least 2 levels, you should always create 2 levels of abstractions of your system. So first level, usually it's called a context diagram. It's something like representing the high level information. You have 2 processes, and then you have a second level where you have a concrete domain, where you have the same process which was introduced in here. Okay, so you just use the decomposition of the architecture of your system, but I think it's just a regular process. Don't forget to create more abstractions. That's the message. Coming back to how to assign a concrete threats. So I have prepared there is the castle modeling. So there is a context level of the castle. So here is a trust boundary. This is my castle. There is a castle services. There is some remote castle which want to talk to me, and there is some local user. Okay, so this is the context. Then the first level would look like this. So still, here is the boundary, my castle, and this remote castle now was decomposed into 2 processes, to be concrete, remote castle SSDP and remote castle service. So these 2 services want to talk to me, to my castle. So what I want to do, I already have prepared some model. By the way, this EAP file I will provide, that will be also available to you, so you can play around with this and you can explore it further. So in this file, in this model, EAP model, you already have identified the threats, how to assign the threat. So you can, for instance, what you can do, you can, let's say that I will replicate. Let's say that there is a possibility of spoofing the LSA and the castle service. So you have 2 options. Option number 1 is that you will manually first place the threat element of a type spoofing onto diagram, and then from the element which is being threatened, you will create a relationship. Then to the element, you will create the concrete name. What is this? For instance, spoofing of source data, and then in the note field, you will create some description of that. In a following process, what you do next, you identify the potential threat, then you think about a potential mitigation, how to mitigate the concrete data spoofing. So here you have the element mitigation checklist, which will give you some insights how possibly you can mitigate the concrete threat. Once you have created the element on a diagram, by creating the relationship between a concrete mitigation checklist and a concrete threat, then the circle is closed. So then you have identify the concrete threat, what is threatening the element, what is threatening, and the concrete mitigation checklist. Then when you perform some countermeasures, you mitigate it. So for instance, you introduce appropriate authentication or protect secret data and so on and so forth. Then it's checked, and here you see the evidence that you mitigated the risk. Okay, so again, there is no automation at the moment, but that's why we have a sequel webinar, which I will invite you once this. I will tell you more about this this upcoming webinar, where there will be discussed the specific extension where there is automation already introduced in it. So again, this was the manual approach, how to create a threat and a mitigation manually, step by step. You can also use at your ease the created predefined threat patterns. So for instance, you identified the spoofing threat, then you select the spoofing, and the difference is that it will just save your time and it will automatically add both elements, the mitigation together with the threat, on a diagram at once. Okay, so that is the difference. Coming back to the overview, so we went through diagramming, threats, identification, threat mitigation, tracing to other models. To those who know Enterprise Architect, as I mentioned earlier, Enterprise Architect is a really versatile tool which can be used for different domains. And the biggest advantage of Enterprise Architect is that you can have all the models stored in one repository. So you can have within one repository, you can have a package structure, which one package consists of enterprise architecture artifacts using, for instance, Archimate language. Then another package can contain some software aspects of your system, and so on and so forth. And then you can have a concrete package which is related to a concrete domain, which is describing which is having the threat model in it. In order to create traceability between those models, you have several options how to do it. If you want to navigate from one to another, so for instance, the castle service, you can use a feature which is called select composite diagram, and then this feature allows you to quickly navigate to existing diagram. So once it is created, it automatically appears this glasses symbol, and by clicking on this, you can either preview the diagram which is linked to that, or by double clicking you can get to open the diagram which is related to the concrete element. This is just for the navigation purposes. The pure, or let me say, the traceability aspect is covered by creating relationships between the elements, because once you establish the trace, then you can see in the traceability window how this element is traced with some other elements coming, for instance, from a different domain. So this is the way how you can very easily, I'm not saying that you have to have it everything in one diagram, but this is one of the way how you can create traceability. And in fact, these two can be in separate diagrams, but the trace relationship is still there. The type of relationship, it really depends on your methodology and on your agreed domain-specific language within the concrete organization. All right. Let's come back to the agenda. Perhaps talking about traces, if I remember correctly, in the quick start, yes, in the quick start predefined model, there is also something called matrix relationship, a relationship matrix view. The relationship matrix view allows you to see the traceability between concrete elements, which meets the filter, which meets the conditions of this form, which is up here. So first you need to define source and target package, then the type of the element, and the link type. This is the relationship type, what you want to see. If there is a relationship between the concrete elements, then you see the arrow which indicates, yes, there is this concrete type of relationship between those two elements. The last point of the presentation is the documentation report. I have one of the last, there will be one more actually. I have prepared a documentation model, which is using a concept of a virtual document. This is quite advanced thing for enterprise architects to create a sophisticated document generation. I'm not going to show you how this is done. If you want to see how this is done, feel free to visit our website, sparksystems.com, section in resources. There is a webinar recordings, and there is definitely at least one webinar covering this topic. So virtual documents, okay? So what I wanted to show you is that once the virtual document is created, virtual document structure is created, then you can simply generate a documentation out of the model. I'm using a specially customized report, template report for this purpose. In order to save some time, I already pre-generated this report, and here is the result. The result consists of some cover page, and then you see some TOC, table of contents. Here is something what I will show you once I'm done with previewing this report. This is called, this is the heat map, which is also part of Enterprise Architect. The heat map is really dynamic, okay? So I will show you briefly in EA how this is done. So you have a heat map, then you see a concrete diagram, then you see the elements used in a diagram, the description of the elements in a tabular format, and then what you see here is actually the concrete tagged values associated to the concrete element with respect to identify the concrete threat type, the priority, and so on and so forth. Okay, so as you see, the documentation, I will make it just, we're not going to go to the details, but I will just zoom out. The documentation is quite talkative and impressive, in my opinion. And if your organization is operating in some regulatory domain or regulated domain, I'm pretty sure that you will you will need to create some documentation looking like this. Okay, so a last thing of my demonstration is the way how you can communicate in Enterprise Architect using business language. So I will navigate to the diagram overview. Oh, I missed that. So here's a proof that this is a live demo. Okay. All right. So now we are here. The communication. We went through the report generation, and now I will show you dashboards, how you can create, what type of dashboards you can create in Enterprise Architect. We will not go through the Prolaborate demonstration in this session, but of course, Prolaborate is the web-based tool, is a little bit more advanced. And let me navigate. I need to find, where is the dashboard? Dashboard, there we go. So dashboard is also part of Enterprise Architect. I believe it's part of every edition of Enterprise Architect. We have 4 editions of Enterprise Architect. And the dashboard is dedicated diagram which has these toolbox items representing pie charts, bar charts, and there is also possibility to create this heat map. The heat map is really fetching the information from the model based on this SQL query. I just opened the heat map. And you see here that, so this is the query. You see that the heat map clearly shows that we have the most type of our identified threats of a type of elevation of privilege and spoofing by the size of the area. It shows you the amount of a concrete of occurrences of a concrete element type. Threat priority, we have most of the threats in having a high priority, and mitigation state, we are at the beginning, so not started. It's the most used. Okay, so this is the end of a demo, and I will jump back to the presentation. And just wanted to let you know about our upcoming webinar. We'll be talking about ThreatGat. So the tool, what I mentioned before, is called ThreatGat, which is a powerful, award-winning product developed as an extension to Enterprise Architect by the Austrian Institute of Technology, AIT. It's a super handy tool that automates the threat modeling process. So what the demo version was all about, there was no automation involved. And this tool, it evaluates risks, give you recommendations for how to fix them, and even generates threat models for you. Plus, it keeps you up to date on the latest threats and vulnerabilities. So it's really constantly increasing and keeping the rule base up to date based on the exploited threats or or threats what were exploited. The upcoming webinar features Christoph Schmidtner, a safety and security expert in the automotive and industrial sectors. And he leads a team at the AIT Austrian Institute of Technology and serves on multiple committees, including ISO TC22 road vehicles. Christoph is also a designated expert in corresponding international standardization groups, such as TC65 or AHG2, if those numbers ring a bell. So then I highly recommend to join the upcoming webinar, which is already planned on June 15th. And by the way, he's the project leader. Christoph is a project leader for developing ISO Pass 5112 guidelines for auditing cybersecurity engineering in road vehicles. This is really a hot topic in Europe. And so if you're interested in the regulations, so I highly recommend you to join this upcoming webinar. And so let me ask the question again, is cybersecurity modeling the silver bullet? Well, no, but let's embrace the power of threat modeling and incorporate it into your comprehensive defense strategy puzzle. That's it. I've seen some questions.
Very good. Thank you very much, Bob. That was great. I do use Enterprise Architect at work, so I'm quite excited. Tomorrow I'm going to find some time to play around with the threat modeling. Very good. So we do have a couple questions. So Jamal has asked the question around security profiles. So do you plan to address the NIST 800-53 threat model?
Well, I think you already know the answer. The idea of the built-in capability of threat modeling is at no additional cost, and there is no implementation of any standard or any regulation. It just allows you to draw enhanced DFD diagram, which we called trust diagram, and to identify the threats. The threat identification and the mitigation has to be done manually by you. So no, we as Sparx Systems, we don't plan it. However, this question is a perfect question for the upcoming webinar. Okay,
for next month, June 15th again.
Correct.
Okay. Next question around data flows. So these DFDs, are data flows independent constructs from SysML item flows or object flows? And second part to the question is, can you leverage your functional or physical SysML decomposition to create the data flows?
Oh, I would have to look into the meta model for this.
Okay.
So if I remember, it's been a while. If I remember correctly, that was used from not from SysML but from UML, and I think the data flow were using dependency. If I'm not item flows or object flows. Item flows, I think I have an idea where this is coming from. So item flows, yes, keep in mind, we wanted to make it as easy as possible, the implementation of threat modeling just for beginners. So the question probably comes from the special type of relationship, which is called item flow, which allows you to assign a concrete element which is being transferred or conveyed by the concrete item flow. Well, this is definitely good thinking, but the way how it is implemented, it is not using the item flow.
All right, thank you. And both Jamel and Ernesto have said thank you for your answers. That's actually the only two questions that we have. I'll maybe wait another few seconds here if anybody wants to add a question. But just further notes to the ThreatGet, the next presentation with Bob and Christoph. It will take place on June 15th, which is a Thursday. And that particular session will be held at a different time of day. So we're going to be holding that during the lunch hour Eastern time. So from noon to 1:30 on Thursday, June 15th, Eastern time, noon start. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in. So I just want to take this time to thank you once more, Bob, on behalf of everybody and the INCOSE Canada chapter. We're excited that you were able to join us, and we're looking forward to the next session in June.
Excellent. Me too.
Thank you, Bob. And
Thank you
thank you,
so
everybody,
much.
for joining. We hope to see you again
Thank you,
next
everyone.
month. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.